Hey everybody, I'm Trevor.
I'm Vincent.
And we are the Anthony and Todd Show. Today we're going to be checking out the latest project by the Good, the Bad, and the Queen, Merrie. The Good, the Bad, and the Queen is originally unnamed English alternative rock supergroup. Their current lineup includes Damon Albarn, Paul Simonon, the bassist of The Clash, Simon Tong, the former keyboardist of The Verve, with their Bittersweet Symphony, that was him, and Tony Allen, who's a Nigerian drummer, composer, and songwriter. So a pretty outstanding lineup. As far as
and also like a really eclectic lineup too, just like
yeah,
it's just very strange.
Well, I mean, you've got old members like The Clash. Obviously, you've got some like middle members like Verve and Damon Albarn from Blur, and then of course like Gorillaz is more modern, so he probably brings like a lot of that new stuff in there. And then I think Tony Allen is just I don't know. He's a really like incredibly talented member, but also like a very undiscovered and not very well known member.
Yeah, not really well known, but he has like that like veteran quality to him. If that makes sense.
For sure.
Yeah.
The band's first album was released in 2007, and it was just titled The Good, the Bad, and the Queen. So they really didn't have like a name, and then they just kind of took that name and applied it to the rest of their albums that have come up since then. Their first album was a concept album about modern life in London. It was actually produced by Danger Mouse, which is another legend.
Another legend. I think that would have been interesting to hear that, like him be a part of this as well. But because I think anytime Danger Mouse gets the fullest extent, like a rock project, like with the latest Parquet Courts, or even like his work with like the Black Keys, I think it works like super well.
I think he's just incredibly talented with whatever he does. But it's not about Danger Mouse. This is Albarn's second album of the year after his Gorillaz project, the Now, which came out earlier. Merrie is 11 tracks at 37 minutes, and Simon Tong calls it modern English folk music with a bit of rub-a-dub in it. So thank you, Simon Tong. I couldn't have said it better myself.
But this album is essentially just like a goodbye letter to the European Union, because it all surrounds Brexit, and essentially kind of a very poetic version of what Brexit means to Albarn. I guess it kind of covers same territory like punk acts would cover. Let's like compare it to like Idols, for example. Idols is just like very anti-right, very upfront. It's just very stern fuck you face to face, whereas this is a more very poetic, very regal fuck you. If that makes sense.
This album is incredibly British. There's no other way to put it. Like, it might as well just have the Union Jack and be drinking tea.
And I think
like that's just marinated in this British culture, from its name down to its subject matter and its members.
I think it makes sense because you're also covering at the same time what it means to be British. What do these borders mean?
Yeah.
What does all of this mean? Like, what does land mean? Are these borders actually borders? Is it people that come in here? Are they British? Like, all these different questions about like immigration and Brexit and the current state of the government.
Yeah. But I also think it's interesting that a lot of the messages ring true, at least to us in America as well. Like, a lot of the things that they're talking about, while they are exclusively like about Brexit, they really make you think about the state of other countries as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very universal message that's delivered in an incredibly British way.
And it also, going with the imagery that's on the cover and has been appeared in the music.
Michael Cera?
The imagery that appears on the cover and the imagery that appears in the music videos of Damon Albarn being a puppet, I think this album has to do a lot with how you're essentially just a puppet of your nation. You really don't have control, but the photo that's on the cover actually, I think, reveals a lot about the nature of this. And you are a puppet in a sense to your government, but at some point you can take over, because the image that's on the cover is from a 50s film, I think, where the puppet... Fuck you.
It looks like Michael Cera.
It does not. I don't understand. Oh my gosh. But the image that's on the cover is like, it's from a 50s film where there's this demonic puppet that's taking control, and I think that actually means a lot, because we are all puppets, but we all have the power at some point to take over and take control and use our voice to make the government and make our nations what we want them to be. And I think that's actually an interesting like imagery that's pushed through this. And I think also it comes through in the music with like the track Lady Boston, where he's Damon Albarn's essentially just a small thing on the back of this giant creature, and he wants to know where he's being taken because he has no control over the matter as just like this lone force, but he wants to know where his nation is going and where I guess Britain is going. And I thought that'd just be cool, really poetic imagery about this kind of creature that's out of control and kind of going in this direction, and he has no idea or no naysay in it. Some other moments that I thought were cool on this is the last man to leave, which is this almost kind of like spoken word bit from Albarn, where it's almost in this like dystopian where he's this like weirdo that's like taking medication and stuff and like robbing grocery stores or pharmacies or whatever, but he declares that he's the last person to leave Britain because I guess implying that because everything's turned to shit, everyone else is going to leave. Because of Brexit, everyone's going to leave, and he's going to be the captain that remains on the ship and goes down with it as it's sinking. I guess he has that kind of mentality with the nation, in a sense, which is interesting. I just found that to be a really, like, almost dystopian-like tale. It kind of reminds me of, like, the world of Clockwork Orange, which is, to a certain extent, just, like, it just doesn't feel right. Nothing adds up to, like, how the, I guess, placement of the world seems, or how it's described. Gun to the Head is a fantastic, catchy single that, I don't know, just has a lot of quirkiness and almost like merriment, but like, it reminds me a lot of like a carnival in a sense. It just feels very free weightlifting while it's talking about animals and how we don't mind the immigration thing and all these other rules are a thing because we're animals, but we have decency to understand empathy, where they're very strict in those rules that everything needs to be no immigration, walls, separating from the European Union. Like, they need all these things. I think it's more of, in the end, we're all animals, so we should all embrace the nature of kind of like just acting like it, I guess, or being more empathetic in a sense, which I thought was a really cool idea, to this very like horn, like woodwind back instrumentation that's very playful, as I mentioned, carnival like, and bringing back almost kind of some of the Blur vocals that Albarn's worked with before, and at least on the latest Blur album, very kind of almost moany, but like this yapping moaniness to it that I find really interesting. Ribbons, I think, is a very like passionate moment where he's talking about making representations to all the various nations in United Kingdom, and how he wants to be a representation of all of them, and how he feels not only for himself but for all the different nations, as how all these are going to be separated from European Union and how they're going to be affected, and he wants to empathize with not only his own nation but the other nations, and I found that to be a really cool thing. I think this is a very poetic album. It's the rub-a-dub, I guess, ness is more from like the quirkiness to it. It is something you can sing to. Isn't just like folk music. It isn't just like a Bob Dylan or something, lone guitar music. It in a sense has the characteristics of other Albarn works. So like the Gorillaz, it has that like playfulness to it. Or even like Blur, it has that like sense of almost these like yappiness or like almost Britpop sense to it at times, or at least with some of the synths that are being used. It reminds me of previous Albarn works and acts, and I think they all bend together with these this new production from the likes of Paul Simeon, Simon Tong, and Tony Allen. I think it helps back them because they're not just taking like a production stance, they're taking a writing stance, and I think that helps Albarn be more kind of poetic on this. And I think this is some of his best lyricism in a long while. I think almost like Plastic Beach long while. And I'm actually interested in what the concepts of this album is and the production of it. And I feel like the setting, the use of kind of like local terms and almost like a local culture, like being very British, helps out a ton. And I think I really enjoy this album for the statements it's trying to make in a particular way. Not trying to just be super political, but being empathetic and poetic. But still being kind of at home to what your culture is and who are you and what are the terms that make up you and what is your home, and essentially. I thought this was a very interesting project. It is my favorite project that Albarn's put out over the last couple years. So I'm interested to see if this is more at some point. I know there's supposed to be another Gorillaz album after this, so I'm interested to see what that is.
Hopefully that's good. But I enjoyed this. I think this is a very interesting release and some of the most interesting work albums done in a while. I guess I like the direction that he's going for, but I guess more in the grand scheme of things, I'm glad that Damon Albarn is getting all of his ideas out of his head, because I think that he's like a very artistic individual who has like a lot of really good and interesting ideas. Sometimes I feel like they seep over into other projects, which makes them like not as good. So like I like that he did Blur aside from Gorillaz, because the two didn't really feel like they merged ideas extremely often. But when like Gorillaz died out for a little while, and it came back with like a completely new sound, I feel like it was just like a huge culmination of all of Albarn's ideas, and they didn't work well together because they'd just been swimming around for so long, and it was literally like everything since The Fall.
Or more everything since Everyday Robots or whatever it was called.
Yeah, I guess whatever he made like in the between period, it was like all of his ideas from there into the 2017 release was like just too much to incorporate. And then like going into the now he was like, all right, I got everything out, so it was like very minimalistic, not a lot of features. We've talked about it before. I'm hoping that by doing stuff with the Good, the Bad, and the Queen, and then maybe like another like Blur side project type of thing, or even if he goes back to Blur, will help benefit the new Gorillaz album, I think, because he'll have been getting all of his ideas out. It won't just be like a tank ready to explode.
Yeah, he won't be stewing all these ideas inside of his head, and he's able to
like
just
more well-developed things.
Yeah, that's all I can really say out of this. I enjoyed this project, so I definitely recommend it, because it's, again, some of his some of the best Albarn's work in a long time, but this collaboration between all of them is just, it helps everyone out. I think everyone provides their own unique piece to it, which is nice. If you want to hear more of our reviews, we have a weekly podcast every week called The Anthony and Todd Show. Links down below every week on Apple Music and Spotify, the best of the show in audio form. If you want to talk with us about music, we got Discord, and the link to that is also down below. And on screen right now, I'm going to put the Gorillaz Now review that we did a couple months ago. That should be on screen if you want to watch that and hear what we have to say about that album. But until next time, guys, I've been Vincent.
I'm Trevor.
And see you, boyos.
Bye, everybody.